What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Atlantic Files, the number one podcast on the number one division in the NBA, brought to you by the Underdog Sports Podcast Network. As always, joined by your host, myself, Alex Fishbein. Dennis was previously questionable with a non COVID illness and has since been downgraded to out. Mike is schmoozing and mingling with Rutgers basketball people, so we're letting him do his thing. So, of course, they allow me to come on here and give all of you my thoughts on this wonderful occasion, this wonderful day, and wonderful 24 hours. And I'm sure you all know what I'm referring to in terms of this trade. But before we get into it, for all of you, if you don't know, we are on YouTube and Twitch. You can subscribe to us on Twitch too. We're at the Atlantic Files on Twitch there. Give us a follow and everything and jump in our chat and talk with us there. We're also on YouTube. So make sure if you're on YouTube, search the Atlantic Files. You'll find us. Hit subscribe below. Hit the bell for notifications. Wow, I can't speak today. That will let you know when we go live. We usually go live every week. Usually do Tuesday nights, but the last few weeks we've had some things going on. Yesterday was Halloween, so happy Halloween to everybody that celebrated that as well, and happy November as well. We're also everywhere you get your audio podcast: Spotify, Apple, Google, all of those. You can find us on there at the Atlantic Files as well, and we also have socials. We post usually some of our clips from our podcast on our socials. We'll talk to some people on there. If you have questions, we'll bring those questions onto the show. And so you can check us out everywhere at the Atlantic Files or at Atlantic Files, or one of the two. So, as I said, we're here to celebrate the day that James Harden finally has been traded. After we talk about the trade and probably how he does in the first few games with the Clippers and how we see how he meshes with the team and everything like that. That's when we will probably the only other next time we will talk about James Harden. Other than that, I hope we don't have to talk about James Harden on here pretty much ever again. Now I know my beard has gotten thick right now, and you might say like I'm going for the James Harden look, but I promise you I'm not, because I don't want to look that way. I don't want the big beard. As you can see with my thing down here, ding dong, the beard is gone. Just like all the witches and ghouls and goblins are gone because Halloween is over, so is James Harden. And it happened in the middle of the night. His favorite time of day when he goes to the strip club happened in the middle of the night. He gets traded back to his hometown in LA. And I got to say, we are okay with the return. The return, I think a lot of people blew out of proportion. Um, Tyler here. Welcome to the show, Tyler. Thanks for tuning in, man. Ding dong, the beard is gone. Hey, I had to let people know. But a lot of people, I feel as though they overreacted. Surprise, surprise for the internet. They overreacted to the return that the Sixers got in this whole deal. Now, I will bring up the entire return for this on the screen here so we can talk about it, because there is some subtle uh I would say like subtle details. Actually, I just saw right now that the Clippers are actually flipping Philip Petrushev to the Kings. They're flipping him and Cash to the Kings, who was part of this deal, and it looks like I don't even know what they're getting back. It doesn't even say. Clippers sent out 3.1 million in cash, 2 million to Philadelphia, 1.1 to Oklahoma City. Yeah, so there's that. I mean, that's really neither here nor there because uh, that doesn't really change the needle on anything. So let's look at the series of Woj tweets that happened all in the middle of the night, so that none of us could really see what happened. So the very first thing, obviously, Sixers agreed on a trade, send him to the Clippers. The Sixers acquire Marcus Morris, Nick Batum, Robert Covington, KJ Martin, and multiple picks in a pick swap for Harden, PJ Tucker, and Philip Petrushev. Now, the Clippers are sending the Sixers a 2028 unprotected first round pick from them. That's the Clippers pick, two second round picks, and a pick swap. And in this whole process, the Sixers did have to waive Danny Green because they needed that to figure out the um, like the roster spots. So obviously, you only have a certain amount of spots, so that had to be really figured out there. And then if we go to the actual article here, so like I said, a 2028 unprotected first round pick from the Clippers. They're also sending a 2027 first round pick swap to Oklahoma City, which clears the way for the Thunder to move a protected 2026 first round pick to the Sixers. The Clippers are also sending a 2024 and 2029 second round pick to the Sixers in the deal as well. And the pick swap is in 2029 also. There were some really subtle details to that pick swap, I believe. There's like three separate teams in this pick swap, and it's like the person who is the least favorable or something along those lines. But honestly, it feels as though it's definitely uh just like one first round pick. It feels like it, but they can technically like, really say that it's two and they can flip that. So the tangible assets right away. The Sixers can play guys like Marcus Morris. They can play Robert Covington. They can play Nick Batum could probably get some minutes off the bench as a depth piece. KJ Martin is, I think, probably their most athletic wing player they've had since KJ McDaniels, for any of you that remember him. The Sixers have had an issue finding athletic players, let alone athletic wings, for the longest time. I think Ben Simmons was literally the only one that they had in the last like 5 to 7 years. So someone who can actually, dunk over somebody and rise up and, get the crowd going and get down the court on a fast break and throw down alley oops and things like that. He brings some excitement, at least along with him. But again, I don't know where or if he'll fit into the rotation. Some of the graphics you've seen on social media and things like that, they don't even have him listed as like part of their depth chart. So I don't know what exactly is going to happen with that. I would assume that KJ Martin is going to get some minutes, especially off the bench. Right now, the pieces that the Sixers got in return, I don't think they're going to play the first game they can, which would be, we're recording this on Wednesday, so that'd be Thursday. They have a game against the Raptors again, I believe. And I wouldn't expect any of those pieces to play in that first game. However, Harden is not expected to play, it seems like, until next week. PJ Tucker apparently wants to play as soon as possible, which would be today on Wednesday. Uh, they just needed to wait until all of the physicals and everything went through and the trade, had the T's crossed, the I's dotted, all that kind of stuff. So it's crazy to me that, Harden had all this time off and then was in a ramp up process and still can't play the first game that he gets traded. But, it is what it is, I guess. PJ Tucker's ready and he's going to be say what you want about PJ Tucker. Now, A lot of Sixers fans were split on PJ Tucker. A lot of people said, well, he only scores like 2 points a game and he never shoots and he never makes anything and he hurts the spacing and so on and so forth. He, especially in the playoffs, did hit important shots. He brought an aggressiveness, a confidence, an attitude, a toughness to the Sixers that they didn't have in a long time. And so to me, PJ Tucker is the ultimate like intangible type of player that's going to do all the dirty work that no other player wants to do because we know there's a lot of players out there, especially star players, that don't want to do that kind of dirty work. So having a guy like PJ Tucker is always nice. The good thing for the Sixers is yes, they might have gotten rid of that guy, but they have another one in Patrick Beverly who will do all of what PJ Tucker does minus, the better rebounding and things like that. But he will actually hit some threes and stuff too. So you kind of, you swap those two out. I just think that the whole thing is a win-win for both parties. The Clippers get off of some of the role players that they really didn't know how they were going to fit into their rotation. They didn't have to give up Terrence Mann. They didn't have to give up Norm Powell. And they didn't have to give up another pick of their own to get Harden. The Sixers get rid of Harden. They don't have to worry about him being toxic or him taking away any of the focus from the players that are actually on the floor. They get off of PJ Tucker's $11 million a year contract. Petrushev he was just buried on the depth chart. He wasn't even getting in. He wasn't getting playing time. So it was just a kind of another piece that, didn't exactly matter in terms of their rotations and their competitiveness. And they bring in four guys that all could get minutes if Nick Nurse wants them to. All of these guys are good enough to be in the rotation. When it comes to the playoff rotation, maybe two of them. But throughout the regular season, all four of them could be in the rotation. I kind of doubt Batum is going to stay on the team that long. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets moved before the end of this season or before the trade deadline. But I do see guys like Robert Covington, even Marcus Morris, and probably even KJ Martin sticking around and using Batum as an expiring, along with the picks that they gathered in the return to flip it and get another guard. The reports are that OG Anunoby and Zach LaVine are two names to monitor throughout this whole thing, which would obviously be an upgrade in terms of just like not having that roster spot from when James Harden wasn't playing to then, now getting a guard that really can hold his own and be a part of a team. I think that's the biggest thing here with Nick Nurse and this iteration of the Sixers is that it seems as though, especially over these first few games, they are way more of a unit rather than individuals. And when you had James Harden on the team, it was I've gone over this all last season. It was James Harden dribbles, waits till the end of the shot clock, tries to take a shot or a step back. He's not explosive as he used to be, so he's always covered and then usually misses it. Or they run a pick and roll, wait till the end of the shot clock. They finally get it to Embiid, or they give it to Embiid. He backs down, waits till the end of the shot clock, and then finally give Maxey a couple turns. And that was pretty much the offense. That was the whole thing. There was no, you know, trickery. There was no play calling. There was no sets. There was no really anything. It was here's Harden and Embiid. Wait till the very end of the shot clock, dribble everything out, try to get to the line. That was essentially boiled down the entire offense. Now, I believe I forget what I was listening to. I was listening to some podcast. The team was dead last in cuts to the basket last season. They're already first. Now, short, like very small sample size, obviously, but a complete and stark difference to players cutting, players getting open in general, playing for each other, players, whether it's a two-man game, whether it's a dribble handoff, whether it's the pick and roll, whether it's on the fast break, whether it's actually setting up half court sets. They are finding the open man. They're getting the better shot. They're getting to the hoop when they want to. Embiid is still dominating whenever he wants, but Embiid is also passing a little bit more often this season. He talked about how he wants to play and he can, and he thinks that he can play similar to Jokic. Now, obviously, it's a reach. Like he's not going to be averaging a crazy amount of assists or a triple double just like Jokic is. But I can say so far in the 3 games that he's played, again, small sample size, Embiid is far and away averaging his highest amount of assists per game. He's averaging 7 assists per game throughout his first 3 games. He's still averaging 31 points a game. He's at 3 blocks per game. His defensive intensity seems to have come back on the floor as well. The last couple of seasons, especially towards when Doc Rivers first took over, you could tell there was a switch in his defensive mindset and his defensive energy because he wasn't, you know, diving on the floor as much as he used to. He wasn't going up for every contest as much as he used to. There was a lot of times he was just like, you know what, I'm going to save my energy. I'm going to get it back on the offensive end, and we're going to go from there. But so far in these 3 games, I mean, he's looked like he's back to his old defensive self. And I don't know if maybe it was motivation from the executive poll that said like he wasn't even getting any votes for one of the best defensive players. Maybe that was some motivation for him, but whatever it may be, it looks improved. So I'm kind of losing my way here, but the team in and of itself looks just immensely better, closer, tighter knit, and it's not even the same whole group of guys from last season. So yes, there's some chemistry there with like, the guys that have carried over in terms of Maxey and Melton and Embiid and Tobias and Paul Reed, like those guys, yes, that chemistry has been built from day one when all of those guys have gotten to the team. But there's already good chemistry with Kelly Oubre. There's already good chemistry when you bring in Paul Reed as the center and you have some of the backups in there with either Maxi or Tobias. There's already some good chemistry with some of the reserves they're bringing in that weren't here before. And now you're adding Robert Covington, who already knows Embiid. He already had he didn't have as much of a relationship with Tobias because I think Covington was traded when Tobias got here. It might have been part of that Tobias trade, but I forget exactly the details around that. But he does at least have a relationship with the city. Embiid, like I said, so he's going to fit in pretty easily, especially given his skill set for what Nick Nurse usually runs with a player like that. Covington's going to fit in seamlessly. Marcus Morris from Philadelphia, I think he's going to step up a couple notches just being here and playing for his hometown again. I think that's big in and of itself. Neither one of the Morris twins have been able to play for their hometown team. And we talked about losing PJ Tucker and losing that toughness. You got Patrick Beverly, you got Marcus Morris. Those are some tough motherfuckers. I mean, those guys are super tough players, and you now insert them into the lineup, and people aren't going to mess around with you as much as maybe they did before you added any of these guys. Like when the Sixers lost to Miami in the playoffs, and Embiid talked about needing a guy like PJ Tucker. But I say all this to say, and also, I mean, I don't think it's like a direct correlation, but we could talk about the fact that Nick Batum, France, having a connection with Joel Embiid, he speaks French. And he seems to have a relationship with some of those French guys that when he almost joined the French team for the Olympics, ultimately picking the US, there, I mean, maybe that threw a wrench into things, but there's also that connection there. So that might, help things out as well. Either way, I think all of these the players coming back in this trade fit the Sixers roster and fit the Sixers scheme and Nick Nurse's scheme very nicely. They all fit in where they need to. The picks, now this can go one of two ways. Maybe Daryl Morey waits and just sees how this team plays with what they got in the new pieces and now that they have added depth. And maybe he says, hey, maybe we only need to trade one of these picks to go and get someone who's decent, but can be like a third, fourth star, kind of like a Tobias type, but a guard that might be able to, or an a more athletic wing that can really contribute whenever we need. Or he takes the picks and goes and gets a star player like we just talked about before, like Levine, like an OG Ananobi. I mean, even I wouldn't be surprised if someone like a DeMar DeRozan was involved. There's a couple teams that, they really aren't competing for much. So you can probably try and pry away a couple guys here and there and piece them together into what this team is trying to do. It seems as though my big thing is that without James Harden, the whoever you're trying to trade for next seems as though they'll fit into this way easier than if you still had Harden and you were trying to go get a third star. I mean, my feeling is it is much harder to fit somebody in to a James Harden offense than it is to a Nick Nurse scheme. And I say that because when you have James Harden on your team, you're running a James Harden offense. The offense usually boils down to him dribbling the shot clock out and either pass or shot. Now, I'm very curious to see how the Clippers offense turns out because you got a guy like Russell Westbrook who's been playing better. Kawhi and Paul George should still be the number one and two options. Which can we just talk about the fact that when this whole thing started with Harden, there was all the rumors and the talk and the leaks and everything about how he wanted to go to Houston and get this max contract and be this scoring champion again that he knew he could be and be the number one guy and get all the glory and things like that. Like these were all the reports that said all of this and eh, even still, there just wasn't there's no correlation now. Now you're going to a team that has way more stars and way less time to dribble out the shot clock. Because I'm not gonna lie, if he's doing the same shit that he was doing in Philly, Paul George isn't gonna like that. Kawhi's not gonna like that. Westbrook isn't gonna end up liking that. We saw reports from Westbrook about being such a team player and making sure guys were building chemistry and making sure guys were, like coming to I think it was like his house or they were going on some sort of retreat to, really work on the team chemistry and work on basketball and things like that. James Harden, while everyone was like, singing his praises and saying how professional he was and helping with the young guys. Doesn't seem like a guy who's about team camaraderie. Obviously, this is outside looking in because I'm not in the locker rooms. I'm not in the situation and seeing what exactly goes on. But just from an outside perspective and seeing how he quits on every team he's going to at this rate, he doesn't seem like one that would be like, "You know what? Let me become best friends with the team and let's all go out for a drink or something like that." Like it seems like it's him and PJ Tucker. And that's about it. He went to the club a couple times with the guys from the Sixers like in the very beginning of things and then that quickly changed. You never saw them out together really ever after that. So, I mean, I just don't see how the Clippers plausibly put everything together to actually make this a championship team. And the other thing is health is still in question for the Clippers. Not like all of a sudden this doesn't mean if Kawhi and or Paul George can't play that they're still going to win. Like you mean to tell me that it's just going to be say they get hurt and it's just going to be James Harden and Russell Westbrook for the fourth time. And now that they're much older than they were before and they couldn't do it before, and now all of a sudden they're going to do it. It just doesn't compute to me how all of a sudden they're going to get there. And there still is the question of James Harden's playoff success and how he just mails it in at points in the playoffs. I mean, you can say he doesn't, you know, uh, maybe he doesn't purposefully mail it in, or people think like, oh no, you're just trying to read body language, blah, 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 blah. He had two great games in that Celtics series last year, but with two chances to close out the series, he couldn't come up with anything remotely good. Now, don't get me wrong, Joel Embiid didn't either. A bunch of the other guys on the Sixers didn't either. It's not only him, but if you're trying to change that narrative of you showing up and not playing well in the playoffs, then that doesn't help at all. And so it just gives everyone more ammo to say, why would we all of a sudden change our mind that if he goes to the Clippers, that's going to change? There literally is no evidence that that will change. Tyler here says, not going to lie, I think Harden ruined his career these couple of years. I mean, and that's a debate. That's the thing. There have been debates now. If I've seen debates that if he is an actual Hall of Famer, or if he's an all-time great, or if he's still considered as great as he used to be because of the fact that he's quitting on Houston, moving to Brooklyn, quitting on Brooklyn, moving to Philly, quitting on Philly, moving to the Clippers. And each time he's getting more and more help in terms of the superstars on the team. He went from Houston, where at one point he had Westbrook on the team. They tried to bring in Dwight Howard, that didn't work. They tried to bring in Chris Paul, that didn't work. Then you move him to Brooklyn with Kyrie and Kevin Durant, didn't work. You move him to Philly with Maxey and Embiid, didn't work. Even brought in Doc Rivers. Then he didn't want Doc Rivers, so they fired Doc Rivers. But now he says Morey's a liar. Now you move him to the Clippers with Westbrook again, Kawhi, and Paul George. If he can't get it done with three other superstars slash former superstars, what does that say about James Harden? Because the common denominator of the last 5-6 seasons with all of these teams is James Harden. Now, I know you can say also Kyrie didn't get much farther once he left Brooklyn either. Kevin Durant hasn't done anything yet since leaving Brooklyn. Embiid and them made it the same distance before Harden got there as compared to when he was there. And now it's TBD to see where the Sixers get to now. But there's a lot riding on James Harden's legacy in this season because, like, I talked about this, I think it was last episode or 2 episodes ago. Even NBA Hall of Famers and NBA greats like Kevin Garnett and them were talking about you don't get unlimited wiggles. You don't get unlimited attempts to just go join other super teams. And then if you win, it's not like, oh, there he goes. He wins. He's an all-time great. He's one of the best ever. Like, say he wins one with the Clippers, it still boosts his legacy because he has a ring. However, every time that ring comes up in debate, it's going to be, well, he left 4 other teams to get there and joined super team after super team after super team, and finally he got one that helped him get to the finals. Because let's be real, if Kawhi and Paul George could stay healthy, they would have gotten to the finals by now. If health wasn't an issue, they would have gotten to the finals and possibly have won it by now. So him coming to this team doesn't mean he helped them win. It means he needed them to win. Unless I will take that back if he goes over there in the postseason, has a tremendous postseason. And I'm not saying like he has to score like 40 a game or whatever, just has a very, very good superstar-esque postseason and guides them to the championship, then yes, I would be like, you know what? That was James Harden. That's a great thing for his legacy, whatever. If he goes and they win a ring and he averages like 10 and 10 or even like 17 and 10, while Kawhi and Paul George do the brunt of all the work, yeah, they carried it. That's what it's going to be. And then if he doesn't even make the finals or anything, that looks even worse. So, and the thing is, he went to the West. The West, where it's uh, most of the time even more difficult to make it to the conference finals than the East is. So, I just don't see any of that happening. Again, I think the trade, all in all, is a win-win for both parties, especially a win for the Sixers. You weren't going to get much else. Everyone's talking about, well, the Sixers didn't get a star player. They didn't get Terrence Mann or Norm Powell. I actually read that. I read somebody say they didn't get a star player because they didn't get Terrence Mann or Norm Powell. If you think either one of those two is a star player, your definition of star player is so out of left field, it's out of the ballpark that it's so far gone. I don't even want to hear any of that. But regardless, no team was going to give up a star player for James Harden. Literally not a single team. If there was another team that actually wanted to like trade for Harden and wanted to offer a superstar, they would have tried to offer him something in the offseason before he even opted back into the Sixers. Because they could have just signed him. But Harden knew that nobody wanted to sign him, so he had to opt in. That was his best option, was opting in and requesting a trade. Which means nobody wanted it. So this return for the Sixers is the best anybody would have gotten, whether he demanded that trade or not. That's the best anyone would have gotten. Because also, as a team trading for Harden, you just watched him quit on 3 separate teams. You watched him quit Houston, quit Brooklyn, quit Philly. Now I'm supposed to look at his next step and be like, I think he's going to stay with us. Only 1 year left on his deal, expecting to get paid after this year too, knowing that he's not worth that money. I think he's going to stay. Yeah, why not? That's not going to happen. Like that just defies all logic. So, all in all, like I said, win-win. So, let's move on real quick. I just wanted to bring up a couple guys here in the Atlantic Division who are both been balling out. Tyrese Maxey, Cam Thomas, they've been killing it. Oh, actually, wait, before I get there, I did want to go back real quick to this James Harden bit. I wanted to show just a kind of a schedule of events. So from Brandon Scoop B Robinson, friend of the show, he's been on a couple times. Shout out to Scoop B. He gave this timeline from a source of his. So Thursday, this is for those not watching on YouTube. I'm sharing it on the screen there. So if you're listening to this, Thursday, NBA tells the Sixers they're investigating why Harden was kicked off the team flight and not playing in a national TV game. Friday, NBA tells the Sixers to rectify the Harden situation ASAP. Friday night, Morey restarts negotiations with the Clippers. Saturday, Clippers GM plays hardball and wants more than Harden from the Sixers. Saturday night into Sunday morning, other NBA owners complain to Josh Harris to stop obsessing over his NFL team and pay attention to his NBA team. I've never been a Josh Harris person. I don't care for the guy. I think he's a weirdo. His mannerisms just scream weirdo to me. But that's neither here nor there. If you have to be told to pay attention to a professional team that you own, that's an issue, especially with the fact that the Sixers have a exponentially higher chance to make the finals and win the finals than the Washington fucking Commanders do of winning an NFL Super Bowl. Like, Washington's chances of winning a Super Bowl are here, Sixers are here, and it's not close, but, like, also, the Sixers still have a bit to go to win an NBA championship. Like, I'm not saying they're, a favorite to win their championship, which means the Commanders are really fucking low. So that's an issue in and of itself. Sunday, Morey submits his counteroffers. Sunday night, the NBA talks to Steve Ballmer to see if the Clippers' interest in Harden is actually legitimate, which I feel as though is kind of bullshit if they have to see if it's actually a legitimate thing, because it sounded like they were just, playing a cat and mouse game for no reason. Monday, the Sixers owner and Clippers owners instruct their GMs to get the deal done. Josh Harris has no fucking business to tell anybody, Daryl Morey or anybody, to get a deal done if you have to be told to even pay attention to your own fucking team. If that's the case, you can't say shit. I personally would be like, that's cool and all, but fuck off. Monday night, Woj is alerted that the deal's almost done, so he doesn't board his flight to LA so he can be the first to break the story. At 2 a.m., they agree to the deal. I just think some of these things about this timeline are just outrageous. I'm not saying, like, I do think that that's how it probably played out. But I just think that from the Clippers ownership standpoint, the Sixers ownership standpoint, especially, they're both idiots. It just seems like this whole thing, they're just dumb. And how do you even let it get to that point? I don't get it. I don't get it. So yeah, we're moving on. Tyrese Maxey and Cam Thomas, like I said, they have been going off. Tyrese Maxey had not single-handedly, but gave the Sixers the edge in a deal because he was constantly removing more and more leverage from James Harden throughout each game that he's played. He's averaging 30 points, 6.7 rebounds, 6.3 assists, and only one turnover a game while shooting 50% from the floor and 56% from three and 91% from the line. Outrageous. And with each win, it kept knocking off the leverage of Harden because it was like, don't let the door hit you on the way out, because obviously we're perfectly fine. It took the Bucks a 39-point outburst from Damian Lillard in his first game with the team just to win by 1 point. Like, and then the next two games, Sixers offense looked great. Like I said, the scheme looked great, team looked great, Maxey looked great. Joel Embiid dominated the Raptors and didn't even have to play the entire fourth quarter. Also, mind you, finally a coach that can say, like, hey, we've done enough and we can keep a lead with the bench out there because of some of the offenses that we're running. So, you know what, Embiid, you don't have to play, instead of somebody like Doc Rivers who throws Embiid in at the end of the game and then gets hurt. Miracle. Tyler says, in Maxey we trust. Retweet. That's all I'm going to say. But Maxey is just amazing. Cam Thomas, gotta shout out Cam Thomas. I know my two co-hosts aren't here, the two Brooklyn Nets guys, but I will shout him out for them. He's putting up 33 points a game, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1 turnover. Shooting 61% from the floor, 30.8 from three. I mean, he's not shooting great from three, but he's getting to his spots and he's averaging 10 free throw attempts a game and shooting 83% on those as well. I mean, just putting up crazy point totals. And uh, I mean, you keep giving him the minutes and you keep putting in some defensive players around him. I think he's going to be perfectly fine. I think the guy's he can be a solid starter or even just a very solid six-man type of scorer. The guy you just say, "Hey, go in there and just get buckets." Like I don't care if you get some steals. I don't care if you get some assists. Just get buckets. He's one of those guys, like a Lou Will. Get in there and just score. That's all we want from you. Just score. So yeah, shout out to Cam Thomas as well. Shout out to Scotty Barnes. He's also doing well. And that brings me to the last topic, which is probably be a quick one here since it's just me with you guys. Um, week one thoughts and reactions. I mean, Victor Wembanyama had some slow bits and pieces to his first few games. Plays tremendous in the fourth quarter so far. His fourth quarter heroics have been uh, outstanding. His huge plays at the end of the last game to beat the Suns, especially after talking about how like Kevin Durant was one of the guys he looked up to and everything, and then he goes out and like gets the ball, slips past Durant, gets himself a putback dunk. They then steal the ball from Durant and get the go ahead layup slash dunk, and they end up winning the game. Like that was huge. Wembanyama's just been really fun to watch, just in general. Chet Holmgren, the one game he had 7 blocks. These young guys are insane. The Orlando Magic suffered their first loss of the season the other night. The Orlando Magic have kind of been fun to watch, to be honest. I like seeing Bankero and Wagner and those guys really working off of each other. They've been playing very well. Definitely like seeing some of them. Detroit, I mean, Jalen Duren is a beast. All-Star Thompson, I think he's looking very good, very promising so far. And then the only one I would say I'm not going to say I expected them to be better because I didn't expect them to really like jump up the standings all that much. But the Houston Rockets, they're not as fun as I thought they would be right now. Like I just thought they would be a fun team to watch because they do have the abilities, they have the talent to, put up some points. But it's just I don't know. They've just been eh. Sengun has been great. Don't get me wrong, Sengun has been good. Um Amin Thompson has been all right. He's shown some flashes here and there. Fred Van Vliet has been okay. Dylan Brooks, same old, same old. Um Jalen Green, I gotta say, I would like to know when we can officially say that Jalen Green is just not what everyone thought he was going to be. I'm not going to say bust because I still think he can be a solid contributor on an NBA roster, a solid rotational piece, and a guy that, if given the chance, can still score. But as like a game changing enough pick to be picked up as high as he was, I just don't think that's there. I and it's still kind of early to say that. I know that, but he hasn't given any indication to believe in it. So there's still ways to go with him. I don't know. Outside of that, Denver, I mean, Jokic looks good. The Lakers have gotten a couple wins, or maybe was that their first win against Orlando? I don't remember if that. No, they're 2-2. Yeah, Phoenix, man, you guys have heard us beat this idea or point or opinion to death, but their availability and their health is already terrible. Booker's played 1 game. Bradley Beal hasn't played a single game. There was a tweet that said, like, "What's going on with the NBA and these super teams?" And they showed the Celtics with Porzingis and Drew joining the team, then the Clippers with James Harden joining the team, and then the Suns with Beal and Booker and Durant. And I was like, only one of these teams have actually played with all of those guys on the floor, and it's the Celtics. The other two haven't played a single game with the whole super team. Now, the Clippers one just got formed. We're still waiting on James Harden, but even then, it said we're probably not till next week. We're going to see Harden join the team. The Suns, I have no idea when Beal's finally going to fucking play. Booker has been dealing with injuries ever since the opening night. So the Celtics have been the only one that actually played with their super team, and they've looked damn good too. So I, I don't know. I hope super teams just go away. They get annoying. I mean, even with the Milwaukee Bucks, we're calling them a super team because it's Dame and Giannis. Technically, the Pacers are first in their division. So I don't know. Pacers also, when Halliburton is healthy, looking good as well. Hawks are figuring things out. Jalen Johnson, man, Jalen Johnson looks good. Jalen Johnson is, I think, what everyone was hoping Jeremy Sochan was going to be. I hope I didn't butcher his name. For some reason, I feel like I just butchered it, um, but yeah, I think that that's what everyone was hoping he was going to be, especially when Popovich said he was going to start as a point guard. And Jalen Johnson is actually doing the things that everyone was hoping he would do. So, really like Jalen Johnson. I think if Johnson can sustain the level of output that he's doing right now, he instantly makes DeAndre Hunter and Sadiq Bey both very expendable. I think that they both can be traded immediately for better pieces, and as well as Clint Capella, because Okongwu is going to give you the same exact things Capella's giving you. So uh, I think that the Hawks could be a buyer throughout the season up until the trade deadline. And outside of that, I think those were my main takeaways so far. Cleveland hasn't been as good as they should be because they've had health issues as well. Golden State has been fun as usual and fun to watch. Oklahoma City, they're growing and getting used to things and really looking like they'll improve. Minnesota, boring. So boring. I can't stand watching Minnesota. I think Minnesota is my least favorite team to watch in the entire league. And that's even worse than like some of the tanking teams. Like the Wizards, they're not tanking, but they're fucking horrible. And still I'd rather watch them over in Minnesota. And that's I like Anthony Edwards too, but man, they're just hard to watch. Whew. Anyway, I think that is it for us here. For me, at least. We will catch you guys next week. Hopefully, we'll update our injury report. We'll see if Dennis has recovered from his non-COVID illness by the time we get our next episode out there. But next week, we'll be right back here on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, all live streaming our latest episode. And you can catch us on Spotify, Google, um, Apple, everywhere you get your podcasts. Please subscribe everywhere. Leave a comment. It helps with algorithms, but it also helps with ranking us on some of those podcast websites and allowing new people to see our show. And that really helps us out greatly. So please, I thank everybody who tunes in, who subscribes, who watches. And if you leave a comment, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. So from me, from the guys, thank you everybody for watching a new episode of the Atlantic Files, the number one podcast on the number one division in the NBA, brought to you by the Underdog Sports Podcast Network. We will catch you guys next week. Peace.